There's a brutal, overlooked truth about human nature. The person who learns to stand alone, who becomes comfortable in the company of their own thoughts, holds a power that terrifies the world. In a society addicted to validation, constant noise, and endless distraction, solitude has become not just rare, but a forgotten weapon. And if there was one mind that truly grasped this, it was Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance master of ruthless wisdom, understood that the man who detaches from the herd, who walks into the silence of his own mind without fear, becomes untouchable. Machiavelli believed that true strength is born not in the safety of the crowd, but in the isolation of one's own solitude. History has always favored the outliers, the thinkers, the ruthless visionaries who withdrew from society to cultivate an inner force no one else could match. Solitude isn't a punishment. It isn't loneliness. It's clarity. It's where emotion is tamed, distractions are silenced, and ambition sharpens like a blade. The man who no longer needs approval, who stops chasing applause, attention, or affirmation, becomes the most dangerous figure in any room. Because when you need nothing, you control everything. Look at the world today. The average person clings to relationships, groups, and artificial companionship, not because they genuinely enjoy it, but because they are terrified of confronting themselves. They drown their anxieties in constant conversation, lose themselves in the endless scroll of social media, and numb their insecurities in the noise of others' opinions. But strip all that away, and what remains is a raw, unfiltered self most people can't bear to face. And it's in that vulnerable silence, in that discomfort, that real power is forged. Machiavelli once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." While the average man fills his life with shallow friendships and empty alliances, hoping to find meaning in the approval of others, the wise man withdraws. He observes, he studies, he cultivates strength in the quiet moments, knowing that the only loyalty worth possessing is the loyalty to one's own ambition, one's own vision. Because people are fickle, alliances crumble, but the man who has mastered solitude stands unshaken, no matter what storm comes. Solitude teaches you to rely on no one. It forces you to confront your fears, to engage with the darkest parts of your mind, the insecurities, regrets, and weaknesses you've spent years avoiding. But here's the paradox Machiavelli understood. When you step into that darkness willingly, when you face those inner demons alone, you begin to tame them. You forge a kind of unbreakable mental resilience that no betrayal, failure, or heartbreak can touch. And history is filled with men who proved this truth. Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors, fought endless wars while trapped within his own thoughts, turning to philosophy in solitude. His meditations, written during these lonely nights, remains one of the most powerful guides to personal mastery. Niccolò Machiavelli himself was exiled from the political world he craved. Isolated in the countryside, he spent years alone, years in which he created The Prince, one of history's most controversial and influential works on power and human nature. The most formidable leaders, the most cunning tacticians, have always known this. Solitude isn't an absence. It's a presence of clarity, of ruthless self-awareness. It's in the silence that your instincts whisper to you, that your perception sharpens. You begin to read people without them speaking, to sense motives behind words, to see betrayal long before it arrives. The absence of distraction reveals everything. But society today shames solitude. People will call you antisocial, heartless, detached, cold. Why? Because they fear what they cannot understand. The average mind, conditioned to seek constant reassurance, cannot comprehend the strength of someone who stands comfortably alone. They want you dependent, distracted, craving external validation, because a person who needs nothing is beyond control. Machiavelli warned that the powerful are always surrounded by flatterers and opportunists, and unless a man has trained himself in solitude, unless he has learned to be content without applause or reassurance, he will fall prey to these manipulations. The man desperate for company, desperate for approval, will compromise his principles. The man at peace in his own company cannot be bought. The power of being alone isn't about rejecting others for the sake of it. It's about strategic withdrawal. It's about knowing when to engage, when to observe, and when to disappear into yourself to sharpen your weaponry, your mind, your discipline, your focus. Solitude builds endurance. It teaches you to endure discomfort, to master silence, to find strength in emptiness. And only through that discipline do you discover your true limits. Because once you've forged that internal fortress, once you've tasted the independence of self-reliance, no betrayal, no loss, no failure can break you. You'll have developed a strength the world cannot touch. And while most people believe power lies in armies, influence, or followers, Machiavelli knew better. The man alone who commands himself is worth more than 1,000 followers who cannot command themselves. Because armies can be bought, followers can be swayed, but inner power, once forged, remains unshaken. And when you step into that kind of independence, when you begin to crave solitude, not to escape the world, but because you've outgrown the need for it, you'll find yourself entering a realm of power most men will never even glimpse. There's something Machiavelli understood that most people still refuse to accept. When you're alone, you see people for who they really are. When you step back from the noise, the false friendships, the polite conversations, you begin to recognize the manipulations, the insecurities, and the quiet desperation that lurks beneath the surface of human behavior. And in that clarity, you realize just how much of society runs on illusion. Most people aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to their needs, their affection, their support, even their admiration. It's conditional. It exists only as long as you serve a purpose in their story. Remove that utility, and you'll watch them vanish like smoke. Machiavelli believed it was foolish to place your faith in the loyalty of others. In The Prince, he warns, the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. People's loyalties shift with their interests. The only relationship you can truly rely on is the one you have with yourself. Solitude reveals this in brutal, undeniable clarity. The moment you step away from constant interaction, you notice how quiet your phone becomes, how few people actually check in, how quickly your name fades from conversations. And it's in that silence that you learn one of life's harshest but most liberating lessons. No one is coming to save you. No one owes you loyalty. No one will carry you when you fall. And strangely, this is where real freedom begins. Because when you stop expecting loyalty, you stop being disappointed. When you stop relying on others to support you, you stop giving them power over you. You start to move differently. You stop chasing approval, you stop explaining yourself, and you stop compromising for the sake of acceptance. You become dangerous, not because you threaten others, but because you no longer need them. Machiavelli understood that solitude isn't weakness, it's strength in its purest form. It strips away the illusions. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and others. And through that discomfort, you gain a kind of mental toughness most people will never possess. The man who is comfortable in solitude cannot be manipulated because he has nothing anyone can take away. He's not driven by a need to belong. He doesn't fear exclusion. He doesn't crave applause. This kind of man moves in silence. He observes. He studies people's motives without speaking them aloud. He sees through flattery, recognizing it as a tool of manipulation. He detects betrayal in subtle shifts in tone, in the way eyes dart, in the hesitation before a compliment, and he remains unshaken because his foundation isn't built on the approval of others. It's built on ruthless self-awareness. Throughout history, some of the most formidable minds cultivated this solitude. Leonardo da Vinci withdrew from public life to create his masterpieces. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai, lived in self-imposed exile to master his craft and mind. Even Napoleon Bonaparte spent long nights alone, strategizing battles and dissecting human nature, understanding that the masses move as a herd, but the leader moves alone. Solitude doesn't just expose others, it reveals you to yourself. In the absence of distraction, you're forced to confront your weaknesses, your fears, your failures. You face the insecurities you've hidden under ambition, the regrets buried beneath bravado. And while most people run from this, Machiavelli advised leaning into it, because once you face your own darkness, no one can use it against you. Imagine the power in that. Imagine standing in a room full of adversaries, knowing every flaw, every fear they could weaponize against you, and not flinching, because you've already confronted those demons alone. You've already bled in the shadows, fought your battles in the silence of your mind, and emerged with scars that no longer hurt. That's the kind of unshakable power solitude offers. But modern culture teaches the opposite. It convinces you that to be alone is to be broken, that isolation is a sign of failure. They'll tell you you're cold, disconnected, heartless. They fear people who don't need constant connection because dependency makes you predictable, and predictability makes you controllable. Machiavelli's writings consistently warned against becoming predictable. The powerful man is unreadable. He adapts when necessary, withdraws when wise, and strikes when least expected. And solitude is the environment where this adaptability is born. It's where you learn to detach from outcomes, to move without announcing your intentions, to build strength quietly. You stop explaining your decisions, you stop seeking permission, and in doing so, you make yourself untouchable, because the man doesn't need validation is the hardest man to control. Most people are prisoners of their social ties. They stay in toxic relationships, fake friendships, and suffocating groups because they fear what exists outside of them. But Machiavelli knew better. He believed the man willing to walk alone would eventually command the crowd, because strength draws strength. And while people may mock your solitude at first, they will one day seek your guidance when their own foundations crumble. When you master solitude, you master yourself. And once you control yourself, you become immune to the manipulations of the world. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved. if you cannot be both, because fear is respect without dependency, and it begins in solitude. Machiavelli's insights into power weren't just about external forces or political maneuvering. They were deeply rooted in the internal strength one gains through solitude. There's a misconception that power is all about force, domination, or controlling others. But the truest form of power, the one that endures, doesn't rely on others at all. It is self-sustaining. And that's why Machiavelli valued solitude above almost all else. It's in those moments of solitude, those times when no one is watching, that the foundation of true power is laid. Machiavelli argued that fortune, fate, and circumstance will test a man's will, but the man who is master of himself, who stands solid in solitude, cannot be broken by external forces. His mind is a fortress, impervious to the chaos of the world. He is unshakable, not because he has avoided hardship, but because he has learned to endure it alone. The moment you understand that the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself, you unlock a kind of invincibility. You see, people often seek validation from others because they believe it affirms their worth. They look for praise, attention, and applause from the outside world to feel secure in themselves. But what happens when that applause stops? What happens when the world ignores you, criticizes you, or even betrays you? A man dependent on external validation crumbles, but the man who learns to be at peace with himself, who embraces solitude, will always stand tall. He is his own pillar, his own foundation. Machiavelli's own exile from political life became the perfect crucible for him to refine his understanding of power. Stripped of external support, surrounded by nothing but his thoughts, he was forced to rely on his intellect and his inner strength. In isolation, he crafted ideas that would change the world. The Prince, one of his most influential works, was born not in the bustling courts of Italy, but in the quiet solitude of his own mind. This is why Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized the importance of a ruler's self-sufficiency. To depend on others for support is to invite weakness. No matter how loyal a person seems, their loyalty is always tied to their interests, their desires, and their needs. The moment those needs shift, your position of power becomes vulnerable. But when you stand alone, needing nothing from anyone, you are untouchable. And that's not just about physical isolation. It's about mental and emotional independence. To be alone, to be comfortable in your own company, is a radical act in today's world. In a society that pushes us to constantly engage, to share, to interact, and to conform, solitude is seen as unnatural. We are taught to fear being alone, but in truth, solitude is where the mind clears, where creativity flourishes, and where strength is forged. The great leaders, the true masters of power, understood this. They knew that the greatest weapon is the one you wield alone. Solitude forces you to face your own demons, your own shortcomings. But rather than fearing that, Machiavelli saw it as an opportunity. He believed that if a man could master his own mind, he could master the world. A man who can stand alone in the face of uncertainty, who can make decisions without relying on others' opinions or judgments, is the one who will emerge victorious in any battle, be it political, personal, or professional. In solitude, you discover what you're made of. You confront your fears and weaknesses head on. And when you do, you realize something profound. You are stronger than you thought. You don't need the approval of others to feel validated. You don't need constant affirmation to move forward. You are your own validation. You become self-reliant, self-sufficient, and unstoppable. The power of being alone isn't just about avoiding others or cutting people out of your life. It's about understanding that your worth doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from who you are when no one is looking, when no one is judging. It's in those quiet moments of solitude that you build an unshakable sense of self. And that sense of self is the foundation of all true power. Think about the leaders who have left an indelible mark on history, the ones who have shaped nations, shifted ideologies, and changed the course of humanity. Most of them spent significant time in solitude. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, famously spent hours alone, immersed in his thoughts, his theories, and his ideas. He understood that the greatest breakthroughs come not from the noise of the world, but from the quiet contemplation of a single mind. In solitude, you learn to trust your instincts. You sharpen your judgment and your decision-making. You become more attuned to the subtle cues and signals the world presents. People reveal themselves when they think no one is watching. And when you are alone, when you observe without engaging, you begin to see through the facade, to understand the truth beneath the surface. And that's when real power begins to take root. Machiavelli knew that the ruler who could master himself in solitude would never be at the mercy of others. He would always be prepared, always be a step ahead. The external world might shift, alliances may rise and fall, but the man who has learned to be unshaken in his own company remains impervious to the chaos. He moves forward with purpose and clarity, undistracted by the noise of the world. The lesson is simple yet profound. To master the world, you must first master yourself. And solitude is the crucible in which this self-mastery is forged. The man who can stand alone is the man who can stand against anything. By now, we've explored the quiet power that comes from solitude, but there's one more layer Machiavelli reveals, and it's crucial to understand if you want to truly embody the unshakable power of being alone. The truth is, isolation isn't just about personal growth or inner strength. It's about the strategic advantage it offers over everyone else. The ability to operate from a place of calm, self-sufficiency, and clarity, while others are driven by fear, distractions, and social pressures, is what allows you to control the game. Most people can't stand being alone for long. The silence becomes unbearable. The discomfort of facing their own thoughts is too much, and so they fill their lives with noise. Endless chatter, social media distractions, relationships built on convenience rather than true connection. They live in a constant state of external validation, relying on others to shape their identity. They allow the world to define who they are, instead of the other way around. But the man who chooses solitude is different. He becomes immune to the opinions of others, and that's a dangerous place to be, because in a world where people are constantly looking to be influenced or swayed, the one who cannot be manipulated becomes the true power player. He's no longer influenced by the opinions of the crowd. He isn't driven by the latest trends or social pressures. He acts from a place of inner confidence and clarity, a place where only his own thoughts and judgments shape his actions. In fact, Machiavelli believed that the ability to remain unaffected by external forces is one of the most vital qualities of any ruler. A leader who is constantly swayed by public opinion or who seeks constant approval is weak. His decisions are based on popularity, not principle. But the leader who operates from solitude, who can make difficult choices without worrying about what others think, is the one who will ultimately succeed. Because he isn't acting out of fear or desperation. He is acting out of a deep, unshakable conviction. This kind of independence isn't about rejecting the world. It's about mastering it. When you learn to be comfortable alone, when you cultivate that mental and emotional strength, you begin to see the world for what it truly is. You understand that everything is temporary. People are fickle. Situations change. But your power, your strength, comes from within. No one can take that from you. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from the ability to shape those circumstances. The truly powerful man doesn't wait for the world to give him what he wants. He takes it. And in order to do that, he needs to have complete control over his own mind. Solitude provides that space to cultivate this inner strength. It's in the quiet moments of reflection that you can strip away distractions and focus solely on your own desires, your own goals, and your own vision. Consider the most powerful figures throughout history. Some of them were loners, often misunderstood and criticized for their distance from the crowd. But it was precisely that isolation that allowed them to think clearly, to move without fear, and to shape the world according to their own will. These men didn't get distracted by the noise of the crowd. They didn't concern themselves with what others thought of them. They understood that the most powerful thing you can do is focus on your own vision and execute it, regardless of the opinions of others. Napoleon Bonaparte is one of the most classic examples of this principle in action. The man who was exiled, who lost his empire, and who spent his final days in isolation on a remote island. He was a master of solitude. During his reign, he made decisions that seemed unpopular, that seemed reckless, but they were calculated. He didn't rely on anyone to tell him what to do. He listened to his own instincts, his own mind. And while history has critiqued his decisions, there's no denying that he shaped Europe in ways few could ever dream of. Solitude offers the clarity necessary to make bold, unconventional decisions, the kind that set leaders apart from followers. The ability to think differently, to act against the grain, to choose a path others would not dare to walk. All of that is born in solitude. It's only when you detach yourself from the constant stream of other people's opinions that you find the courage to chart your own course, free from the constraints of societal expectation. Machiavelli taught us that the true measure of power is not how much influence you have over others, but how much control you have over yourself. The man who has mastered solitude is a man who cannot be controlled. He is a man who, no matter what the world throws at him, will always find a way to succeed. He understands the rules of the game because he has learned to play by his own. In solitude, you gain perspective. You learn to detach yourself from emotional reactions, from the fleeting fears that grip others. You become more aware of your surroundings, more in tune with the motives of those around you. You begin to see things others miss, and it's in this awareness that true power lies. But the greatest strength of all is this: the ability to remain calm when everyone else is in panic, the ability to make decisions in the midst of chaos, the ability to act decisively without hesitation or doubt. This is the power of solitude. This is the power that Machiavelli was talking about. It's the ability to control your own fate, to act with confidence and clarity, no matter how stormy the world around you may be. The ultimate lesson Machiavelli imparts is this: being alone isn't a curse. It's an opportunity. It's your chance to find your own voice, to chart your own course, and to become unshakable in the face of the world's chaos. And when you do, you'll discover that the real power, the kind that lasts, the kind that is unshakable, comes from within. It's the power of knowing that you need nothing from anyone because everything you need is already inside you.